Hi, I'm Richie Mackay.
And I'm Davey Bolt, and you are listening to the Wrong Bias Podcast. And on today's show, we are listening to the first part of our little trial we did, which was a forum podcast. And I'd just like to quickly say thank you to those who took part, which were Dom Picksley, Lauren Farquhar, Ed Morris, Graeme McDougall, Happy Bowler Dumbrell, Craig Burgess, Stephen Beamish, James Wombwell, and Bruce McCall. We had a few chats about different topics, but what we've done is we've split it, and we're going to run one for this podcast, and we will do one for our Christmas show, which will be on Boxing Day. Also on the show, we will be having our competition where we'll be giving out some Wrong Bias merchandise, and we'll be covering a few other little bits and pieces.
Right, mate, here we are again. Show 25. It seems like a lifetime since we've done one, mate.
It does indeed.
October the 17th, the last show came out.
Just sign of the times, unfortunately, mate, isn't it? There's very little happening.
I know, it's not as if we're still in lockdown either, is it?
No, it's just obviously the restrictions that's in place is just, you know, it's in a lot of sense it's just not financially viable for these clubs to open, is it?
Yeah.
You're restricted to 2 family members on the green, and by the time you pay for your heating and the lighting and everything else that goes with a club, it's just you're going to end up losing out. So I can totally understand a lot of clubs not opening. I
mean, I have my fears for the indoors. I kind of see us getting back indoors, sadly. I think that there'll be another spike over the new year, and I think there'll be a lockdown. And
well, without a doubt. I mean, we're seeing it now, aren't we? There's spikes again. I mean, there's talks at the minute about should they cancel what they'd put in place for Christmas about these 5 days. You're saying, I was looking at something today, Wales is flying up the charts with regards to, you know, the infection rate. And no, I mean, you know, vaccines are massive. It's huge. But, you know, even they're talking about spring to get back to some sort of normality. But I still think there's potential there that you're still going to miss the first part of the outdoor season.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange because probably way back in March, we were sitting there going, well, we'll write off the indoor, we'll wait for the outdoor. Now we're sort of like, we're coming up to December and we're virtually saying the same thing again.
Definitely, yeah. I think in a lot of respects for the sport, as much as anything, it's just got to be a huge contingency plan now for the next 4 to 6 months, because obviously the vaccine is going to be a massive thing. It is going to get us back to some sort of normality, but clubs have just got to make sure that the balance, that, you know, that financial outcome of, do they open up for a few, or do they just bite the bullet and just hang fire and wait until we do get back to where we need to be before opening up again? And I think people have just got to be a bit patient. There's a lot of rumblings, and I read again today, somebody was saying, you know, why is gyms open and bowl centres aren't, blah, and we've had this argument all along, haven't we? Yeah. There's so many different grey areas. Why supermarkets allowed to open but bars aren't? Yeah. When you're looking at Primark queues, 80 minutes was just waiting to buy the product. 6 hours or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
I mean, and you kind of sit in a bar to have a pint.
I know.
It's just
absolutely unbelievable.
We could argue about it all day, couldn't we? And at the end of the day, we've just got to do as we're told, like school kids.
With this being our silver wedding anniversary, we've done a little bit different, mate, haven't we? A little bit of an open forum as a trial. It seems if it worked well. It lasted 2 hours. It was a canny old trek, mate, wasn't it?
It was nice to just get a bit and get people's different perspectives on things and have a bit chat and, you know, just talk about things that we'll maybe generally not get to talk about with just one person coming on the podcast. So I enjoyed it. I mean, you know, long term, we'll have to have a look to see whether it's a viable thing going forward, whether it's just something we do now and again. But no, but like I say, I certainly know there was a few people here couldn't make it to this one, but showed an interest, and others who I'd seen, but for one reason or another, just wasn't the right time. So hopefully we might do something similar again soon.
I mean, I know it was very male orientated, but I think we are going to have a female orientated one, aren't we, mate? That's
definitely. That was just the way I think it worked, or whether it's the audience or whatever it may be. I did try to contact a couple of people, a couple of the women, just to see if they wanted to come on, but it wasn't the right time. So yeah, I think it'll be a good thing, actually. I think it'll be quite a good forum podcast, that one, to get an all-female discussion, because I think there's, you know, without being too sexist, I know there's improvements to be made in both sides of the game, but there's certainly massive improvements to be made to the women. The gender split alone, 70%, 30%, needs to improve massively. So yeah, I think that'd be a really good idea. So if there is any women who are listening to this and would like to put themselves forward to come on and have a chat, then please do.
Yeah, don't be shy. Don't be shy. And we kick off with the World Indoor Championships.
Flag up, they're under starters orders, and they're away.
We're going to kick it straight off and chuck the big elephant straight into the room straight away. Dom, I love this one. World Championship Bowls 2020 or 2021, is it? Right. What's our thoughts where the World Bowls is currently? I don't know. I'm presuming everybody has seen what has happened with regards to allocation of places, etc. As I said in one of my posts, completely accept the fact that anybody who's been invited to the championships, no issues whatsoever. My disappointment in the whole situation is I think that the World Bowls could have done a lot better, bearing in mind that it's an invitation tournament and there was a really, really good chance to put bowls on the map in a lot of respects and show how diverse it is. Disability bowlers could have been live on BBC. You could have had women, you could have had men. You could have completely shown the sport off in its truest form and done it live on BBC. And I'm also disappointed with the clarity of the WBT, why the people were selected, because I think it's put a lot of pressure on those guys to turn up, and people are going to question, how did you get there? Was it somebody scratching your back? Are you scratching their back? Etc., etc. Boyd, what's the perspective from Australia with regards to our World Indoor Bowls Championships?
Well, just to clarify for the people over here, you're talking about potters.
Yes.
So over here, it's the PBA in it that qualifies over in WA and Queensland. Raised that much attention so far, what they wanted to do. Yeah, it doesn't sound, it sounds like they got one viral video and now they want to take it.
What's the general thoughts of your top players across in Australia, Boyd, with regards to they watch this on a regular basis and see the World Indoor Championships, and without doubt, there's some of the best players in the world over in the Southern Hemisphere. Do they look at it with a little bit of begrudgement in a lot of respects that they don't get the opportunities that they potentially could?
I'm not too sure on the top players, to be honest. I think that, because the travel distance is a big factor from the go over there, from what I know. It's a long way to go, pretty expensive. Well, from what I can see, there's only two places you can qualify for it at the moment, and that's WA and Queensland. So, I mean, like in my state, Melbourne, Victoria, nothing.
You could flip that on its head, though, Boyd, and turn around and say that there seems to be quite a few people who are travelling across to play in the UBC at the minute.
True. Yeah, you could actually. It's a pretty exciting little competition.
Anybody else, any thoughts?
I think that's one of the reasons Australia's paving the way. They're making every other association look a little bit amateurish. You look at the high-profile tournaments they have, not only the UBC, but there's also the Blue Diamond as well. Is that right, Boyd?
Yeah, yep, up at Broadbeach.
One they run in Western Australia.
100,000 Everest.
The Everest, I beg your pardon, the Everest tournament. You've just mentioned that there's 100,000 Aussie dollars
it's crazy.
In that tournament. Yeah,
it's crazy. And well, that's one thing. And Fox Sports are getting involved a bit more, and the Facebook live streaming makes it more accessible. So I think if you can get the biggest sporting companies to start sponsoring, open up the clothing range and bring in those companies, you get more money into it.
Well, I think that's one of the massive contrasts is the whole spectrum of sponsorship. In Australia, they seem to be queuing up. We watch some of these live broadcasts, obviously, of these tournaments. Obviously, the Bowls podcast that they do as well. The range of sponsorship on the page, on the desktop, on everything that they do is quite amazing. And over here in the UK, particularly with the World Bowls Tour, they struggle to get any sponsors, So in terms of marketing and getting people on board to support, it seems there's obviously in Australia they're doing a much better job of it than what we're doing here.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I see you guys starting to get into the colour a bit. You've got to get away from that plain, boring sport image, I think. Bring in the colours, put the music out there, liven it up a bit.
That's not going to change, I don't think, with the, as much as I like Potters as a place to go on holiday, and it's where I started playing. Until you move away from that venue and you've only got to flick into the crowd at any point, at any time, and you see the average age of the people in there, and straight away, it just, you're not going to get any sponsors other than Bupa home care and funerals and that type of thing. So until the image until the World Bowls Tour is comfortable moving away from that, nothing's going to change, I don't think, because that is unfortunately the showcase that we've got in bowls in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's the wrong image. It's the completely wrong image that we should be trying to portray for the sport. And even if we didn't get television coverage, I think what we need to be looking is taken away from actually those type of events where we week 2 weeks, and as it is a Potters, it's 3 weeks. I think it's, all in all, it's too long. It's way too long. You could do these events in a lot shorter space of time, and you could do them in such a way that people would be able to travel from other countries to play in them. Obviously, I know that I appreciate this year it's a bit different, but again, going back to David's original point there, the way they've done the draw this year, I think it's an absolute shambles. Looking from the outside in, I haven't been a member of the PBA now for over 10 years. My biggest issue I had with it was the fact that it is tiered way too much towards the top 16 and even the top 8 players there. The odd player breaks through every now and then, but it's wrong. It's, they call it an open singles. It's far from an open singles. So many things I think are wrong with it, and I was kind of hoping that with the change that's happened at the top of the World Bowls Tour, that they would actually start doing things a bit differently. But the first act that they've kind of done since Richard's left has just been not good.
Quickly bring Dom in a minute, because obviously Dom's been heavily involved with the Worlds for a lot of years on the reporting side, etc. I mean, my big issue is, the PBA has been around now for what, 20 years, something around that period of time. Now, that was brought in to obviously give players on the outskirts a chance. Now, at that time, I think there was 4 tournaments: Worlds, Scottish, Welsh, and the UK Open. So we've gone from 4 tournaments and built up a really, really solid base of players through the PBA. And a lot of people have put a lot of money into that, which no idea where that's dispersed in any shape or form. I can only presume it boosts the WBT, what they can offer, the package that comes along. But in those 20 years, where we see Australia is just constantly progressing. I mean, to have gone from where UBC has started and then see an advertisement that there is now $1 million in the UBC, and you look at ours, which in my opinion was in a far better position via the BBC. Great, you've got great exposure, but yet we're down to 2 tournaments and we're still basing it on a top 16 on 2 tournaments. How on earth can you have a ranking system with 2 tournaments? This should have been spotted 5, 6, 7 years ago, saying, hang on a second, something's drastically wrong, where you're looking like we've lost the Welsh. Scottish, we can barely get 2 men and his dog in the crowd, and things were not right. Dom, I mean, from your point of view, you've obviously seen this close at hand. Where's it all gone wrong, in your opinion?
I think, the World Bowls Tour sometimes has a bit of a one man and his dog feel about it. Because when Richard was in charge, it felt like he was doing everything, and he wouldn't the big talk was that he wouldn't let anybody else help him. He wanted to do everything himself, but the thing is, he couldn't do everything himself. He could do maybe 1 or 2 things, but not everything else. And the fact that when you go back to the World Championships, they've got that week of BBC from the Monday to the Sunday, and they just don't take advantage of it because they don't seem to want to market the event, promote the event, get sponsors on board. They just seem to be happy, right, we've got the BBC and we've got Potters. That's all we need. It's a bit like that. We don't need anything else. We don't need all these other sponsors. Yeah, they get Just the World as well. But it's like when you see the actual rink, the advertising hoardings. I mean, they should be plastered with companies all around, the UK, big national companies, and they don't seem to take advantage of that. And it seems to be happy just going with the status quo as it is, and they've been like that for a long time. And like you say, the events have been dropping off, like they used to be the Welsh and like the Scottish, but obviously now the international, now Blackpool, Newton Hall's closed, and that was the venue for that. I mean, where's that going to go? Is that going to come back? So are they effectively down to 1 tournament? And then you can't have a tour on 1 tournament. It just seems like there's too much of going through the motions, and there doesn't seem to be people at the top held accountable, because no one seems to know who these people are. Because I've seen quotes from David Corkill about when he was explaining how the people were chosen for the invites. He was saying, look, we've taken advice from the BBC, Potters, and our stakeholders. Well, who are our stakeholders? Who are these mysterious stakeholders he's talking about? It seems like it's a bit all cloak and dagger within. They've got this nice little group of people who are organising this massive tournament each year, and they don't seem to let anybody else in and know what's going on, and therefore they don't get any help with this, that, and the other to make it grow. It's just sinking further and further down into one little tournament of the world, which is good, but I don't know. It's just they don't seem to be willing to accept any outside help. It's just their own nice little club, and that's it. I don't know. It's baffling, really, for looking on from the outside.
From looking from the outside, Dom, it looks blatantly obvious that it's lack of funds. There doesn't appear to be any money in the pot whatsoever. I can't believe that you could lose an international open. If it wasn't at Blackpool Newton Hall, fair enough, you move it somewhere else. Within the UK, we have got probably one of the best setups for indoor bowls in the world as far as the circuit's concerned. You could take that tournament anywhere. Ed, can I quickly just bring you in? You're at the top of the sport as it is at the minute. You're now part of the elite setup, which is fantastic. Congratulations on that, mate. What's your thoughts from where you are in the sport at the minute?
Well, I would suggest indoors I'm not quite at that level. So I've never actually been that interested in the PBA, to be honest with you. For the same reason as you say, you seem to sort of have to spend a lot of money, spend a lot of time with very little reward. I've always thought of it as a bit of a closed shop and not worth my effort as someone who's probably not very top of the game. I would need like a few more chances to perhaps qualify for things. So I did quite enjoy the Planet Bowls and what's turned into the Open Singles circuit. They're set up a bit more, which is obviously an amateur thing, but it's so much fairer because you can then take the time to go from tournament to tournament and build up those ranking points and get to the grand final. So I've played in a lot of those over my time indoors, but never honestly been that interested in the PBA for that reason, just because it seems like a brick wall in front of you if you're gonna go for it. And even if you do qualify, and even if you do get to, I don't know, beat a couple of the top seeds, you're not going to get back there next year. So I don't know, that might be right or wrong, but that's always been my sort of interpretation of it anyway.
Anybody, James, Stephen, any thoughts?
Personally, I mean, I'm probably looking at it at a completely different angle. I'm very much the amateur level. I mean, I'm just a club player. I played one game for Cornwall down here. So you're talking a whole different stratosphere as far as I'm concerned with that. But look, so taking it from a different angle, and I think Craig hit a lot of the points there, is that you watch Potters, which is about the only bowls you really see on TV or anywhere, and it just fills the stereotype that's out there. And you look at the players, there seems to be no atmosphere or enjoyment almost in the players, or no competitiveness. I don't say they're not competitive and they're not trying, but what I mean is there's no atmosphere there. Look at something like the darts, which I always think is a comparable for bowls as a sport. The guys hit a 180 and they're punching the air and things like that. And you look at, the bowl, the Nicky Brett bowl that's there. There was absolutely no reaction from Nicky about it, and that was also a fantastic bowl. Whereas, what you want to help get the advertising in and help get the sponsors in, you want him sort of running up after that wood, shouting at it, getting the atmosphere. Because I think what a lot comes perhaps more from the Australian side and what they do, and that helps get the attraction in, because what then happens is you get people see that and think, oh, actually bowls is a good sport, and then that filters down, I think, then more to the world level, to the individual countries, and then the counties, and then eventually into the club.
We had a discussion after that Nicky Brett Bowl, James, that you've brought up, and on our podcast, I remember us saying, I can't remember, Richie, who we were talking to at the time, might have been Corky, I can't remember, but we'd said we hope that somebody in that marketing department, whoever the stakeholders are, whoever BBC get involved, whatever it is, we hope somebody sees the reaction of what that one bowl does, which in fairness is part and parcel of our game. From the top bowlers, or from any bowler for that fact, you will potentially see a bowl like that on a weekly basis. But because of the stage it was on, and because of the way the ball was played, it was magnified by multifold. And it was seen all around the world. The reaction from the US, everywhere, unbelievable. How does he get a ball to turn like that and get into that space? Well, I'm sorry, fantastic, but that is just the makeup of what our sport is, because that is what happens all of the time. Now, for me, this is where I just feel as if we've absolutely hit a brick wall again, because this year, it's an invite competition due to COVID. We know the problems that's been caused. We know they've had to make a decision on who to invite, but surely somebody must have sat down and said, what can we do and who can we bring to put this sport in a really, really great light? One person off the top of my head straight away, which for me, just seeing what he does on television would have been an inspiration to thousands and thousands of people in the UK. You'd stuck Bob Love on the TV with no arms, playing balls with his feet. is just the most amazing thing you will ever see in bowls. And that goes for anybody with a disability for that fact. But can you imagine what the reaction would have been watching Bob Love playing bowls on TV on BBC? That would have, for me, got a bigger reaction than what Nicky Brett would have got. And not only that, how much inspiration would that have given to so many people with disabilities all around the world? The commercial outcome of that could have potentially attracted so many sponsors, so much interest, and so much national recognition and world recognition that it would have done the job for WBT on its own. But yet, no, they haven't thought about that. They've gone cloak and dagger again, like they always seem to have done, and not told anybody about who they're selecting. And you haven't even got one of the top women bowlers in the world playing in this World Championships.
Comparable to when Oscar Pistorius made the Olympics, weren't it? He was big news. So, again, it got artificial limbs. If you see somebody doing something different, it inspires not just disabled people, if that's the bracket you want to put them in, but able-bodied people think, well, hang on, if he can do it, there's a chance I can do this.
Anyone can play. That's my thing. Hashtag anyone can play. And that's the unique thing about this game.
And is that not the biggest selling point of our sport? Anybody from 3-year-old, potentially 3-year-old or 103-year-old can play our sport. Doesn't matter what your sex is, what your condition is, have you got a disability, gender, whatever it is, you can play this sport. But yet the opportunity's been there to put it on national BBC TV, and not one opportunity is being taken to show off our sport for how good it is. Who cares whether it was maybe one-sided in some of the games? It doesn't make any difference. It's that wow factor of people turning that TV on and going, my God, can you come in here and have a look at this? There's a guy on TV who's lost both of his limbs and he's playing with his foot. It sells itself as a sport, and it puts people like Bob, who have done wonders for his country, etc. Dom, again, I'll bring you back in quickly. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. How good would that have been for you reporting?
Yeah, it would have been amazing. Yeah, someone like Bob Love, like you say, if there was a couple of ladies in, Julie Forrest or Catherine Rednall, they've missed that opportunity. But then on the flip side, if they'd have included 2, 3, 4 players like that, would you have then got some of the lads just outside the top 16 who have been ignored? Would they have been complaining about, I've not been selected, she's been selected, but I haven't? But there's always someone who's going to be moaning about not being selected. But yeah, I agree with you that they've missed they had 16 players to invite. They could have invited anybody, and like you say, to promote the sport with BBC coverage, they could have really gone up to town and attracted someone like Bob Love or Julie Forrest, Catherine Rednall, someone like that. So someone different, because it's an open competition as well, to really promote the sport. But as you say, they haven't taken that opportunity, and it's some of their decisions they were picked, fair enough, but some you have to think, why is he being picked, or why is he not being picked, and why is he not being picked? But there's too much discrepancy really about it all, and there's not enough reasoning behind the decisions. That's one of the worst things. They haven't actually come out and said, look, we've chosen these 16 because of this, that, and the other. They've not said anything, and still not put anything on the website about it either, which is a bit strange as well.
And there'll be more on the World Championships later in the show. And now we tackle those balls that take an age to bend. Okay then, tide balls. Okay, straight balls. I'm just going to move us on to a different subject, mate.
I was just about to say.
One of my pet hates, straight balls. I think it kills the game. I do. I think it defeats the object of the sport. I've played against somebody with Aero Maxims, I think they are. And are them the boomerangs, Davey?
Aye.
They're the big massive, boomerangs. Yeah. And then you've got the fella next to you playing with dream lines. They should be called nightmare lines, because there's no lines with them balls. I'm sorry. What's your thoughts on straight balls? Dom, I'm throwing that one to you first, mate.
Yeah, when I don't play so much now, but when I used to play, it used to be a big bugbear of mine that I used to have good Drake's Pride Professional Plus, good bendy balls and get around the heads and all this. Then you get someone who just goes straight at the jack, and it wouldn't divert off its path. And it was just like, it should be banned, or they should be made to have at least some sort of bias. Yeah, it's very, very frustrating.
Graeme, go on, you have your sixpence.
Well, it's interesting. I've played out in Australia and I've played in the Far East, and it's amazing. Everybody seems to use the Dreamline XG.
Oh.
And Boyd, I'm sure you'll know loads of players that use Dreamline XGs. Yeah?
Yeah, mate. They're very popular over here, the XG, but...
even in Malaysia and Thailand, they all seem to play with these straight balls. Okay, sometimes the ring that's, you get a better advantage playing with those. But me personally, I still like to see a ball finish, a ball bend and fall down.
Just depends on what speed your green is. I mean, if you run a real quick green, 18, 20 seconds, you're going to pick a narrower ball because it's still going to bend.
It takes us that long to walk up the green, boy.
That's what I was going to ask you, Boyd. At what point over in the Southern Hemisphere, I recently watched a final where Bryant and Alcock were playing the pairs. Can't remember whether it was New Zealand or Australia. And they were literally...
Oh, it was unbelievable.
Sending the ball out. You might as well have just picked a paper up and made yourself a cup of coffee waiting for it to come back. At what point did that change over in the Southern Hemisphere? Because obviously they all must have been playing with those type of balls. I can't imagine that Bryant and Alcock would have come across there and playing against somebody with really tight balls and got the results that they did. Why did that change? Why did the Australians start to then drift? Did the greens get quicker? Or did the natural progression of the game, everybody went tighter?
Yeah, I think just natural progress. You're looking for a nicer line, especially there's no good playing on a 16-second green with an old set of balls where you're throwing it out to the other rink. With the rinks, you're going to interfere with the other head, so they've got to sort of tighten it up a bit to make the ball at least stay in your own green.
Do you feel that benefited the sport in Australia and New Zealand, or
absolutely different variety? Absolutely, especially if you're a lead, new bowlers coming into the sport. It's got to help having a nicer line to the kitty. You're giving a new bowler now an old set, and they're throwing them right out, wherever. And if you give them an easier set to play with, they're going to not find it too hard and maybe persist a bit longer.
Did it take away a little bit of the skill in the game, do you think, or not?
Depends how fast your green is again, If you're on a 10-second green, you don't want to be using turbo pros like straight down the line. I mean, unless you're a lead.
I suppose it's like everything. I suppose when England go across to Australia in the Ashes, the wickets are so much faster, and we tend to struggle over there, and vice versa. You guys come over here, and it takes quite a bit to adapt to our slower surface. And actually, I was going to say giving your balls some green, but even with swinging balls in our country, you're still only giving them about 2.5 foot in some cases. But anybody else, any thoughts on straight balls?
Well, they're clearly not. They clearly weren't designed originally for play on grass. At the end of the day, on an Australian green or an indoor green, and you can be annoyed by someone playing with them, but you at least understand. But outdoors in this country, if someone plays with green lines or tighter, I can't understand it.
What's the pace? What kind of pace are you talking about over there on the grass?
Anything from 8 seconds up to about 14 or 15, I guess, on a good green.
Oh, really?
I've played on like 7 or 8 seconds greens. They're just awful.
Do you have synthetics? Do you have a synthetic green?
Not many. No good ones.
No,
really,
very, very poor. They just cannot seem to get them level over here for whatever reason.
They're awesome. I mean, they just run good. 16 seconds all the time.
You probably get a bit less rain than we do over here.
Well, rain speeds it up again.
Does it really?
You should be built with big arms. Throwing them down that pace. God, maybe that's your problem. People get there and go, "Oh, geez, I can't even reach. How am I going to play this game?"
8 seconds is a fast green in the north.
Flying, mate, flying. It's like playing on glass. These Aussies don't know when they're well off.
And now a bit of short back chat with Graeme Burgess.
Yeah, the short mat. I mean, obviously they've been trying to do the safe return to the sport, which again you'd imagine would be quite easy from you can space the mats out, etc. I just think it's a missed opportunity for the short mat, especially because there's a lot of issues currently with from the World Council downwards, and it was a good opportunity during this to kind of get things into the right structure and the right place, and they just haven't done that, unfortunately. And as much as the EIBA and Bowls England have put a lot of notices out about what they're doing, which is great, there's been little coming from the national governing bodies from a short mat perspective. But again, I think that just goes down to the fact it's very amateur, and it is people volunteers essentially that are doing it. So, but from our tournament perspective, I think they will be fine. Our short mat players tour events, I get messages every day from people, can't wait for us to be able to get back and start playing again. So I think we'll be fine from that perspective. But I do think short mat is going to really suffer from this when we come back. The membership levels are an all-time low anyway. I think with the ESNBA membership was down to like 14,000 members, which is the lowest it's been for ever, probably since it started really. Always remember figures around the 30,000 mark previously. So yeah, I think it's a knock-on effect, but I think all codes are going to suffer the same.
You would hope from the short mat's point of view, Craig, that because of the situation, there is going to be so many people who have suffered mentally and have been in isolation. These community centres are potentially going to be a lifeline for them, which is, where you see a lot of short mat balls happening. So you would hope from the NGB's point of view, from short mat, that there's some sort of support system or some sort of strategy to try and ensure that, short mat is made available in as many of these local community centres as possible, to try and get people to start to build that trust to be able to come out the house again.
Unfortunately, there is just that vision is just not there. That strategy is just not there. They haven't got somebody in post from the development perspective. Short mat should be the one form of bowls which should be played in most countries, because it's the easiest, as well as carpet bowls. It's the easiest to get set up and get going, and that's why it's taken off in Scandinavia. You can, as long as you got put a mat down 45 foot, you can play it. And so you haven't got to have the facilities that we've all got in the indoor clubs that we play at. You don't need to have all of that structure and infrastructure for that. You just need to have a carpet. I saw Ed recently was at a school doing some short mat there. That's what we should be doing. We should be going to the local schools, to local areas, and getting people involved in this. But we haven't been doing that before COVID, so I doubt it'll be happening afterwards. I just can't see it.
It's in the interest of all the NGBs really, though, to try and help that situation, because short mat and carpet balls, in my opinion, is a conveyor belt to try and for people to come out and play indoor, outdoor.
And I think that goes back to the fact that we haven't got one governing body that has that vision. Whereas I know Bowls Australia, they also do this. I think it's called indoor bias bowls or indoor bowls, over in New Zealand and Australia, and they've got that over there. And as well as they might not get as much money as the indoor and outdoor, we don't justify to get anywhere near as the amount of money that the outdoor bowls gets over there. But having that one governing body is the way to go. But unfortunately, we need to have 10 presidents and 10 chairmen, and we need to have all of this structure, which just unfortunately just keeps the game down where it is basically. And all the issues that we've spoken about in the last hour, I think, all kind of play a part in that, really, just that whole structure.
And now we return to the world indoors, and G-Mac, the floor is yours.
On the World Bowls Tour ranking list. Prior to the draw, they sent us an email on the 26th of October, I think it was, saying that it would be invitational only. So there was this cloud of total vagueness, but they'd already decided in the middle of October the criteria that they were going to choose and the players effectively they were going to pick. So in mid-October they'd already decided that. Come later in the month, when they were going to alert the PBA members, there was this vagueness. As I say, it would be invitational only. So that sets people's minds racing. There's a natural curiosity that's going to come over them all, saying, especially those in a reasonable place within the ranking list, well, how are they going to do this? They had the opportunity then to declare their hand, highlight to the members how the process they were going to do it. But again, they didn't. It was the cloak and dagger, they don't need to know sort of thing. So they've not got the best out of the members by the process they've committed to.
I think they've probably wiped out, it wouldn't surprise if they've wiped out 60% of what the existing PBA membership was left, because there's so much disharmony. And you've hit the nail on the head, Graeme, because at the end of the day, if they'd just been clear about it from the start, yes, I have no doubt whatsoever, you would have probably a little bit maybe frustrated, but you would not have had an issue.
It would have softened the blow.
If they'd come out with a statement and said, we are doing something this year, there is no ranking points available, you will get your chance next year, etc., etc. We are going to do something to try and put the sport of balls on the map to make it stronger for the future. Nobody would have had an issue.
And as you say, yeah, it was a lack of transparency. They had the opportunity on the email when they sent it to the members. It was just this vague invitational only. So, of course, as I say, that the curiosity and concern everybody's got, how are they going to do this, But they had the opportunity to lay it on the line, because they had the meeting the week before deciding how they were going to do it.
Is the gripe about the communication, or is the gripe about the actual allocation of places?
Well, effectively both. I was 23 on the ranking list. And initially I thought, am I just being selfish or just a bit miffed? And I thought, well, I'll leave it just now. And here, Sean Jones got in touch with me. Graeme McKee got in touch with me. Danny Dennison got in touch with me. And when we all spoke to each other, we all realised that we all had similar emotion and feeling regarding the selection process. So on the back of that, that's what fueled the protest letter, asking the questions effectively. But as I say, they could have laid that on the line by declaring their hand in that email where they'd already decided a week or 10 days previous who they were going to invite.
Are any of the players not PBA members that have been invited?
Yes.
It's just, you know, in all counts, that's just wrong.
Extremely. We see that's very galling when you consider, I mean, I've travelled all over the country, ferries, flights, you know, car hire, hotels, a lot. I'm not saying, you know, should be rewarded just for that expense, but it's a sport, and I did mention that in the letter. This is any other sport. Obviously this year's been totally different. No, surely, you know, you should show a little bit of faithfulness to PBA members and go to the ranking list. So what other sport would effectively and flagrantly ignore a ranking list when you can't have qualifiers?
It sounds very much, Graeme, like the comments that you've said and the previous comments that were mentioned about David Corkill, that the tail seems to be wagging the dog, where, you know, instead of going through this list and methodically going through it, people have sat down at a table and said, who do we want here? And missed the massive opportunity of making the sport inclusive for all. So if you'd wiped that list clean and said, right, you know, you bring in your bowler, you know, all your bowlers, any female, male, or anyone, you wouldn't have been upset at that.
Exactly. We chatted amongst ourselves, and Sean said to me, who would you invite? I said, well, I would invite, David touched on it earlier, I would invite the ladies champion, Julie Forrest. I would invite possibly the runner-up lady from last year's Ladies World Match Play in the main open singles, and possibly the top lady or one or two in the ladies ranking list within the main open draw. I know the ladies have got their own separate match play, but to open it up, show how diverse the sport is. David's call with Bob Love, as you say, that would create as much interest as the bowl that Nicky Brett played last year. So we were discussing with it amongst ourselves, not being selfish, well, at that time, but to include the ladies, there was a massive opportunity there to show fairness and diversity.
And I suppose it brings the elephant in the room to the actual name of the title that the guys are playing for. Well, is it going to be a world title?
Because of the contract, they've got to call it the World with the BBC. They've signed on the dotted line, and they've got to market it as that, even though we all know that it's effectively a UK singles competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Graeme, you say about ranking lists, it makes you wonder what's the point of having ranking lists if they're just going to ignore them as well. Of all the players as well, I really feel for Danny Dennison, because not only is he just outside the top 16, the top 20, he won one of the qualifying events, and of the 4 winners, he's the one who's been overlooked. They've picked the other 3 to play, and they've ignored Danny. When you think, have previous indiscrepancies maybe counted against him, which he should not have come into the picture. Yes. If the other 3 are deemed to have qualified by rights through winning the qualifying events, and he's also won one, he should have been in, but why has he been overlooked when the other 3 have been selected?
Yes.
That doesn't ring true either.
Exactly.
There's another thing. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Ronnie, and Richie probably scratches his head every time I talk about snooker.
Oh, he's on snooker again! For God's sake,
Ronnie is.
Get behind the black. Put him behind the black.
Ronnie is obviously the pinnacle of snooker. He's, you know, even by Davis and by Hendry, he's seen as probably the best person to speak up a snooker queue. He's not frightened to say what he feels. And I'm relating this to Danny Dennison. Danny's indiscretions, what are the indiscretions? Is it because he opens his mouth and says things to people that they don't like? So what? People show weakness when, at the end of the day, they can't accept criticism, and they can't accept people saying, well, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is right, or that's right. Come back at us and say, well, no, this is why we've done it. This is why we've done this. Why does somebody not pick the phone up and say, no, I'm sorry, Dave, but you're completely wrong. This is what we've done. And nobody responds because they know fine well what they've done is wrong. And they've done it wrong for year after year after year after year after year. Why does it have to be this? Why does it have to be that? But they've just never, ever been interested in talking about it, discussing it, because it's their way or no way. But unfortunately, that way is now dragging the sport backwards, not forwards. And we're being completely eclipsed by our friends over in Australia, which, like we talked about with Boyd, they are miles ahead of us. Miles, and we see it all the time. People in this country must get in the UK must get sick to death of hearing us talk about Australia. But the proof is in the pudding. They are miles and miles ahead of us. They're on Fox Sports. They've got their own bowls show on TV. What's the difference to Australia than what it could be over here? We've got as many participants, and it's been key sport, or one of the biggest sports in the country, for God knows how long.
For a start, David, they've only got Bowls Australia for a start, whereas we've got how many different organisations? That is one of the biggest problems.
I agree with that completely. I do agree with that completely. We've been held back by the fact that we have not got one overriding bowls organisation looking after everything. And for a lot of years, it's been said that if we combined as everything, indoor, outdoor, short mat, carpet bowls, whatever format of bowls it is, you can then go to sponsors and say that we've got 1 million participants rather than 100,000 here and 50,000 there. And it becomes a lot more attractive proposition to any sponsor coming in the sport. And that's no doubt where Australia is well ahead of us in that respect.
And finally, good old rivalries.
You are yourself, your competitive nature, and I've seen some of the people have that mindfulness and win at all costs and all that type of thing, and they bring that into whatever sport they play.
Bit of sledging.
Absolutely, definitely. I think that's. I know from the short mat, and coming from the short mat into the indoor, I didn't realise in the short mat the biggest rivalry is England-Ireland, because they're the best two nations in the British Isles. When you come into indoor, it was England-Scotland, and Scotland were never ever a problem in short mat in terms of the rivalry. The games are very one-sided in the indoor game.
They're not a problem for England neither, Chris.
But I played a junior series indoors, and I've never seen my first series was up in Scotland at Hugh Duff's club, Auchinleck. And Auchinleck. Oh wow! And just that atmosphere was absolutely unbelievable. And the England-Scotland game was the first one up, and it was just I've never seen anything like it before, and witnessed anything like it before. So it's a different world.
See, them are the kind of games that we should get on get something like that on the telly, 100%. Shouldn't we?
Yeah,
that's your ideal thing to promote the sport. You got people going through the rafters and what have you.
You guys over there are in a unique position too, with all the countries being so close. You just could have like the amazing competition, like you away for Champions League and that. This country, you're so close to everyone. You should be able to have the maddest like bowls competition versus different countries and really plug it awesome. Like, I think you just miss out. There's so many opportunities that you have that is not tapping into with your location. Like imagine you just have the Scotland versus England and France. You got all these countries that are so close together. We'll be really plugging the like Alex Marshall, versus the best English player, and you can have that every year.
The home internationals is fantastic from that perspective. The noise and again when you get an England Scotland England Wales matches, that they tend to be pretty loud. Basically anybody against England, it seems to be. I think it's the common theme. No one wants to see England win, which is it doesn't matter what the code is. It always seems to be the case. But
that's just sport.
That's just sport, isn't it?
You could
support everybody that's playing England.
Even clubs, you got to have clubs. You got your best English club versus the best Scottish club. Those things can be televised. I mean, it's not hard to get the Facebook camera out, drum up a bit of rivalry and stuff.
And I guess that's another part. Really goes back to the Potters thing, where I think there's a little opportunity missed there, because we know all those players that in the top 16. There are little niggles between a few of those players. We know there is that they don't all get on great, behind the scenes, but there doesn't seem to be any controversy there with any of that. Whereas in the darts, I think it's kind of encouraged, and you see that the interviewer's trying to get to that, because the interviewer knows that the situation. And I mean, Rob Paxton made a comment a couple of years ago, and it was like, it's all over. It's like he said one thing, which Paul Foster's face said it all. But that should be every match where they have that type of thing, where next time Paxton plays against Foster, there's this, but they don't do any of that. Yeah, and there should be. I mean, absolutely. Look at Marshall in the Commonwealth Games when he had that England fan in the back giving it to him all during the game,
Oh.
and then he turned around and gave it to him after he played those 2 wonder bowls. That's what we should have.
That's exactly what I was saying about the Potters and getting the players up for it.
Well, I think the nearest we've come to that recently was, I think Les Gillett. Dom will probably back this one. I'm sure Les said something recently where he turned around and made a comment about some of them just like to come down here and have a few drinks rather than concentrating on the balls or something along those lines, which ruffled a few feathers. But then it just disappears into a damn squib. You know, let's have a little bit of aggro on the green, a little bit of nastiness, and create a bit of atmosphere. But and it's competition time, and thanks as always to Alex Marshall Sports, who sponsors us and supports us with our podcast. We're only playing for some Wrong Bias merchandise, a couple of packs available because we are having quite a big competition for our Boxing Day one. So the simple question for this one is, there is a New Zealand lady bowler, legend in the game, who has just retired from international bowls. What is her name? Drop us a line either by email at wrong.bias@hotmail.com, either on our Facebook page, or drop us a message.
Right, there you go, mate. Show 25 over and done with. We'll be very keen to get any feedback on the way the forum came across. A couple of things that have happened in the sport since our last show in October. The retirement of Jo Edwards, probably the best known women bowler in New Zealand. I can't name another one. Can you name another one, mate?
Boo.
No, well, it's a valid point. Anyway, 20 years in international, 646 caps, 2 World Championship goals, 3 Commonwealth Game goals, 6 World Cup singles titles, and awarded Member of the New Zealand Order of Merit in the Queen's Birthday Honours in 2014, which I'm guessing is our equivalent, either OBE or MBE.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, she's certainly smashed the women's game up for a lot of years. As Jo, we've had a couple of discussions before. I would have loved to have seen her at Potters.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
You know, I think that's a huge miss. We've been lucky enough to see Karen come across from Australia, but you know, not the opportunity to see Jo, and I think it's a bit of an opportunity missed. Seeing somebody of her calibre on the TV could only be a good thing, but not to be, unfortunately. And she leaves our international career at the top, which is a great place to go. And I think a huge decision, really, considering she was picked for the World Bowls, wasn't she? Yeah. So she was obviously picked for the New Zealand team, still playing some tremendous stuff. But from what I read, I think she just literally during this downtime had a chat with her husband and just decided that enough was enough and the time had come. Which
probably the same as what quite a few people have found. There's other things to do, mate, isn't there?
Yeah, potentially. And I think it makes you reflect a little bit, to be honest with you, and look at all of the time and sacrifice and family time and et cetera, that you miss out on. And you've got to make that decision at some point. It was like I say, I made it myself, and it's a hard thing to do because when you're competitive, you still want to be playing, but I don't regret it at all now, to be honest. I did it first, but I really don't now.
Yeah. I mean, that's on the back of Karen Murphy, obviously retiring from international bowls as well. That's two of probably the women's biggest stars, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. World stars, without a doubt. You know, I mean, Karen is massive and still will continue to be within Australia. She does her coaching classes and things like that. So regardless of her not playing international bowls, the status of the sport over there, she's still seen as, you know, a major sporting celebrity. So I'm sure Jo will be held in the same esteem over in New Zealand. I feel sometimes it's such a shame that we don't sort of get the same impetus or whatever the word is over in the British Isles to celebrate our top players.
Yeah, I mean, the likes of Jo and Karen, if they were in any other sport achieving what they've done, I mean, it's the same as Alex. I mean, we've touched on it before. The benefits that they would have had from the sport, the financial rewards, you know, if it was been a different sport, there'd been a different place, wouldn't it, really?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's fantastic that, you know, Alex and Paul and Ellen and those who have got MBEs, etc. It's a great thing. It's a really tough one because it's a massive honour, obviously.
Yeah.
But would you swap that for being renowned through your whole by your sporting peers? Because how many different sports could you walk into and turn around and say, do you know who Alan Faulkner is? Do you know who Paul is? Do you know who Alex is, etc.? And would they turn around and say, oh yeah, he's that multi-winning, world-winning, Commonwealth-winning bowler?
I mean, when was the last bowler appeared on Question of Sport? That's a good question for you. Should have been that quiz question, mate.
I'm sure I heard the other day that there was actually a Alex Marshall question on the other day. And Alex's picture came on. None of them got him. Hold my hands up here if I've got this wrong, but I'm sure I read that there was a question about him. His picture came on. Not one of them knew who Alex was, and this is what I'm sort of touching on. And I'm not trying to take away from the award because it's amazing. But as a competitor and as the sports person at the top of your sport, it must be nice to have the recognition of your peers in other sports.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to question who Andy Murray is or Lewis Hamilton is, and as an equivalent, are they any better in the sport?
Alex is probably won. Is he won those same world championships as Hamilton? Hamilton's won Hamilton won 8 now or something, and Alex is 6 or 7. You know what I mean? So the other thing that's happened, which was announced probably late November, was the Open Singles circuit and the fact that Neil Smith and his family are standing down from running the Open Singles circuit. I think it deserves an absolute massive pat on the back for what time and effort that they've put into to get the circuit going. You'll probably correct us, right, mate? Planet Bowls.
Yeah.
And then the sport fell into the infamous World Bowl Series.
World Series Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, that's too good to be true tournament that went down the Swanee and a load of money went missing, and Neil and his family then took up the mantle of starting an Open Singles circuit, which took off. And
definitely,
I think it's a better tournament than the World Bowls Tour, actually, because
they've done a fantastic job, and without a shadow of a doubt, to take it from where it has. And this is, we talk about that World Series Bowls about it being too good to be true. The OSC is just the smaller format of what that was going to be, and if it had not gone the way it had gone, then I think there was a lot of promise. And I stand by the fact that the blueprint that was in place for that was a great thing. But we all know what happened. It all went pear-shaped. Could have just said, no, let's leave it and walk away. But Neil, has been instrumental, and the family, of getting it back from the death, really, and gaining that trust. I think that was the biggest thing.
That was it,
Gaining the trust of people to actually pay money to enter competitions again. And obviously he's got it now where we've got grand finals, etc., etc. So reading along the lines of what I've seen, again, very similar to Joe, it looks as if he's been out for a walk and just decided, that there is, we're putting so much time into this, there is other things to do. And I applaud him again for not potentially hanging on to something and trying to, drag it as far as he could drag it to get what he could out of what he's done, because at the end of the day, he's left. Everybody can turn around and say what a fantastic job, which he has done, and potentially now we've got to get somebody, hopefully, who is going to step into that. And I think you've just said it there. I've said for a couple of years now, the ranking list on the OSC is multitudes better than what we've got on the WBT. It is fair. It basically allows people to enter the competitions and gain points throughout the season, which is just a regular thing to do.
The thing that we like is there's nothing carried over.
No, well, there doesn't need to be, because at the end of the day, you've got to prove yourself. You've got plenty of time over a season to prove yourself. And, the only downside is, as it stands at the minute, and has been a problem for a while, is we haven't got enough tournaments up north. So it's hard for the top players up here to get down and be able to accrue the points that other people are getting. But it's proved we've still managed to get people there in the past. But for me, yet again, I'm going to have another little dig here. This is the time now where the WBT have got to look at that OSC and say, have we got space to be able to tie the two of them together, give people justified entries through the Open Singles Circuit competition. Based on that, then you're going to hope that will then spread to Scotland, to Wales, to Ireland to run their own as well, where you get a top of your ranking list or top 2 of your ranking list to go through the worlds. Then you're starting to get a better pedigree into your competition, not just what it currently is and where it currently stands. So hopefully, I keep saying it, but hopefully somebody gets in there and really, really thinks about where is the sport going, where does the sport need to be, and how can we tie all of the loose ends together to actually make it into a fantastic spectacle and one that's fair for everybody.
Am I right in thinking that they were going to have a chat with the AIBA?
Well, the AIBA have been involved, I believe, since since the OSC came back in, because I think the AIBA were part of the setup to ensure that little bit of safety and give that confidence back to people.
Well, we'll just wish the Smith family all the best, and thanks for what they've done. I'm sure they're still obviously going to be still playing, but for what they've done off the green, pat on the back, stuff me cap ears, and best wishes to Joe Edwards on her international retirement.
Absolutely.
And that's it, mate. Another one gone and done.
It is. We'll have to get some balls back soon, because all I feel like I'm doing is whining and whinging all the time. I think it's just depression kicking in, folks. I'm really sorry if I keep twisting.
Well, that's it, folks. Wish you all a Merry Christmas. Our next show is going to be out on Boxing Day.
Boxing Day.
With a few bloopers in and the rest of the open forum chat. So, best wishes, everybody. Watch what you're doing.
Yeah, and Merry Christmas. All the best, all. Thank you for listening, and hope you've enjoyed the show.
This has been a Dodgy production.